So you go back to what you know is true and what has remained true for a majority of American culture. We have to have a place to start from, but it's really worldwide. There's not really a limit on the hero. Go back to Gilgamesh. I would suggest if you really want to know what it means to be a hero, read Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. It gets a great starting place. And then you move on through that to Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson, which is the follow-up to Joseph Campbell's book. And you also start with the ancient myths. Go back to Gilgamesh. Go back to the Arthurian legend. Read it. Actually read the Arthurian legend, the earliest method runs that you can find. And
yes, I have a copy in my room. Haven't started it yet.
Thank you. You need to read these because
you know what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
You know what? I'm surprised there hasn't been like the villain's journey kind of book, like a monster with 1,000 faces. You know, I'm surprised nobody wrote that one.
There was a retelling of Beowulf where it's told by what is it, Grendel's perspective or Grendel's mother?
I think the mother.
Yeah, but
if it's the same one I heard of.
Yeah, but you know what I mean, like that kind of hero myth, but it's the villain myth. You know what I mean?
You know what? That's actually a fantastic idea. And if you wrote something like that, it probably would gain extraordinary coverage because people don't think of they think of the villain's myth in terms of the sympathy from the hero's side. We don't ever define what is the villain. Why we're sitting here right now talking about psychopaths versus sociopaths. When you get into a book like that, we're simply delineating what it means to be a villain. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to make them sympathetic because you're describing it much like you would describe Fox's Book of Martyrs, a lesson in what it means to be a villain, what much as you define a saint or a hero. How do you define the villain? Somebody ought to do it.
This is just my personal taste, but I've always loved villains, and whenever they're done right, they're done really right. I look at Batman the Animated Series as a great example of this. Some of the best villains are people who could be good. They're given a fork in the road. They can go down the right path. It's not going to be easy, but through one way or another, they end up taking the darker road. And that's
why Mr. Freeze is one of the best Batman villains.
Right.
They cannot adapt properly into a fucking movie for some reason.
Right.
No, they really can't.
They end up succumbing to their flaw, and that's how they end up becoming that villain.
Arnold. You see that with that face, but then I remember this is something my player and I are doing. We're just gonna straight out make a Mangala type villain, and how do you then write that kind of character? Like that absolute disgusting, low end parasite of a human being as a villain.
Oh, it's been done before.
That's a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Superman, Parasite.
Yeah.
That guy.
Oh,
he's a good parasite.
A Scarecrow, actually.
Yeah, he's a good example.
Completely underrated because he loves fear, and thrives on it. Actually, probably closest to.
And also Mad Hatter. Those two, when they work together, are scary.
Oh yeah, and they're actually.
Oh, or like in the. Oh, sorry, go.
Hey, here's something a little. You mentioned Parasite, made me think of Rogue from X-Men. How when she touches somebody, she drains their
everything, not just their powers, but
yeah.
So what considering her ability, what would happen if a Metroid latched onto Rogue?
Geez, well, Rogue would probably win, I would think.
I think Rogue would.
If the battle is prolonged, Rogue almost always wins. If the battle is short, she can lose, but it has to be. Yeah. It's a.
You know how a Metroid operates, right?
Not a clue.
It latches onto a living creature and just starts draining its life energy. When it finishes off,
it's Metroid. I'll let her do it.
Well, listen, they're just swapping spit at that point.
Yeah, they are because she's draining it.
I'm wondering if they would cancel each other out and nothing would happen, or would one overpower the other with the drainage?
Who can suck harder? Never mind.
Hopefully, Rogue.
Oh, jeez.
Let's not forget, Rogue was written as a villain, so she's.
That is right.
Yeah, didn't she kill Captain Marvel in the comics, or am I mistaken?
No, she drained her so severely that she went into a coma and permanently acquired her powers. That's why the MCU needs her right now. It came close to killing her. And
any day now.
Yeah. But also she had all the memories. She drained all the memories too. So she had Carol Danvers' memories conflicting with her own, and she had to deal with a little bit of insanity from that for a while.
Yeah. Here's a question. What are some of your guys' favorite myths? So, like, we could even narrow it down. Like, favorite Greek myth story or myth character.
Not my favorite, but it's the funniest one, the story of Medusa. The real story.
Oh, sir, anything having to do with Zeus and how much of a man slut he is, those are my favorite myths.
That's every Greek story, Stormcrow.
Well,
every Greek story.
I kind of like my version of Ares.
Infidelity.
Christian, do you know the real story of Medusa?
I've read it, but it's never been one of my favorites.
She wasn't even a Gorgon when she started. She was actually a hot chick.
She was cursed.
She was a priestess of Athena, and
made Hera jealous.
Half of the myths in Greek mythology are just who do the gods fuck over at that point in time?
Let's put it like this: Poseidon was looking for some drapes for his windows for Medusa in the temple of Athena. Then Athena got pissed off because he liked the mortal drapes, you know.
Literally, yeah.
Do you guys remember the Ghostbusters cartoon, and not the real Ghostbusters, but the other Ghostbusters with Time Buggy and all that?
No, never. I'm not even sure I know what you're talking about.
Oh, well, they actually had the right to the term Ghostbusters before the movie, so it was an issue on the cartoon show.
The reason I bring up the Medusa one being funny is because you had that one woke sculptor woman who made like a sculpture of Medusa holding Perseus' head. And it was supposed to be a Me Too. Reversal? Yeah, it was supposed to be a Me Too statue.
Oh, that's so dumb. There's so many reasons.
It should have been Poseidon's head and Athena's head.
Like Perseus. Like by the time Perseus got to her, she was already pretty well corrupted. Like my favorite Greek myth is Sisyphus, the story of Sisyphus. I always thought that was really fascinating.
Well, yeah, Sisyphus is one of my favorites.
I have a statue of him pushing the boulder out. And I don't know, different people take different things away from him, but I like the idea of the eternal struggling man. The man who
in fact, he never gives up.
Push.
He never just sits down at the bottom of the hill and quits. He never does. And the same thing with Prometheus, which is my favorite.
That's a great character.
Is he the one that stole the fire?
Yeah, he and Zeus.
He's the one who started humanity as Prometheus.
Yes, and he is god Titan turned sympathetic to humans, gives them the gifts. And this is one of the hallmarks of Greek mythology is there is a struggle between man and God. And they still try to interact with each other, but the gods in some ways prey upon humanity. It's one of I love world mythos. I'm a huge fan of world religions and have studied the ancient ones, and the Greek, that because of the world that they were in, man against man was one of their greatest foes. Actually, the area, although there's a lot of natural phenomena, notably the volcanic phenomenon, earthquake, things like that. So the earth itself seems to rise up against them. Those primitive myths arise as the gods trying to be appeased, and they're trying to stop them from harming them. And so you have this antagonistic viewpoint, and Prometheus is the Titan that brings mankind fire and knowledge. And the eternal struggle for freedom, it is Prometheus who is bound until the end of time, but he shall someday return because mankind must be set free.
Actually, didn't Zeus free him and forgive him in the mythos, or is that incorrect? I thought he was freed at some point.
I believe he is. There are late myths that may indicate that. There are I know that there were allegories that were written by that in the late Greek period, because Prometheus is held up as a hero, and so there may be by most that you're talking about in the actual, not in the mythos itself, but instead in the Greek population. Prometheus is considered to be one of the heroes.
Okay,
it feels like
I just want to interrupt here. Zeus is calling me, so I got to go back to Olympus.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm going to duck out, guys, and I
Tell him I'm not paying that speeding ticket. That was bullshit.
Herman, don't be alone with him. He'll get you pregnant.
Yeah, really.
I think I've already gone past menopause.
The amount of fucking Zeus stories that start with
talk to you guys later.
Evil.
Have a good one, Herman. Thanks for coming on.
Transforms into
See you,
husband
Herman.
and then bangs wife. She gets pregnant.
Well, it feels
King
like
throws
one of the
baby
main
in ocean.
struggles in Greek myth is discipline and
Infidelity and
enlightenment
children.
versus hubris and libido.
Yeah, it's the mind versus the body.
Yeah.
And it becomes a huge theme. And part of it, we have to remember one of the reasons that Zeus has so many consorts is because the Greek, we're talking about fragmented Greek society, early Greek society had its own gods. So Hera is a god in her own right, off in her own area, as those two, and Zeus has his own adherents. As this tribe took over and won against Hera's tribe, they put their god over her. Well, they become consorts in order to bring those two religions together. Rather than you have to follow my religion, they just married them. Well, what happens when you have 1,000 islands and you have 1,000 different groups of people that have these gods? And so they started just
trade.
Make sure that Zeus was on top. He literally comes out on top by seducing every god or goddess that is out there, eventually taking over this whole thing where he is literally the father god. He births all the peoples. He does all these things. So
he asked Prometheus to help him build people, basically.
Yes.
If what I've read is correct.
And I believe so. And yes, and the gods consider it a betrayal. And in early Greek writing, what you do see is the gods, they make that if you cross the gods, they will punish you. And it will be a horrifying. He is eternally bound to a rock to have his liver eaten out by the vultures who come every
day.
It regenerates. And every day, but he still survives. And
Zeus did that to the Incredible Hulk, too, by the way.
Yes.
How pissed are you about how they portray Hades in the underworld?
Yes.
Hades.
So many movies do it
is not
terribly.
a bad guy.
No,
Hades is not a
more
bad
accurately,
guy.
all the
Actually,
gods
Hades
are
in my
very
universe is
levels of
pretty
bad.
cool.
Yeah, but they
Amoral.
always misrepresent the underworld. They're like, oh, it's just Christian hell. And it's like, technically, there's 3 different places and everyone goes to the underworld.
Yeah, they always try to treat Hades like he's Satan or something. The thing is, like, all the Olympians are varying degrees of amoral.
Yeah.
You know what?
Well, here's the other thing. Norse mythology, everyone likes to make Hela, or Hel, as she's known, as the bad guy. Nowhere in Norse mythology does it ever make her out to be villainous. In fact, position she had watching over Helheim was because she was trusted. She was someone who was respected, and they knew she could handle the job. She was given a lot of responsibility, and there is no record in any of the Eddas or anything of her ever faltering on her duties.
That's right.
Yet we always make her a bad guy out of her.
Well,
how
the
did
reason
Loki
why,
make her?
Go ahead.
Huh?
How did Loki make her? She's the daughter of Loki as well. One of them.
Loki and her mother, a giantess. I can't remember her mother's name.
Yeah, that's
supposed to be like
her name was. Hold up. Let me breathe there. Her name was Angrboda. That was the Loki's mistress, I believe.
Oh, I thought they were married.
He was married to someone else, but Angrboda was the one that gave birth to Jormungandr.
Was it both
and Hela?
Yeah, and then his other kid was when he
turned into a horse
transgendered other kid, and
he got fucked as a horse. Yeah.
He said, "Oh, watch this, guys. We'll make a bet and make him build a fucking wall around Asgard."
He got
that reminds me,
an Asgardian wife in the time being.
The one time
he was doing it, and then Zeus went, or not Zeus, but Odin went, "Hey, fucker, he's about to complete this, and we gotta let him marry an Asgardian. So fix this." So Loki turns into a horse in heat.
Well, and once again, we see in Norse mythology, it starts off with and there is an evolution in Norse mythology as well. As we try to go back to the earliest ones, you have the giants.
There are 2 Lokis, by the way.
Yes. And so you have these the edits change, things change. By the time we get to where we write it down, there are different stories. But if we go back to the stones and the original statements, a lot of times they are those giantesses on the frost giants and the other titans of the Norse mythos are actually also local gods. And so you have that same sort of thing happening. And about hell and Hades, you actually have them as a trusted guardian of the dead, the spirits of dead. And then you also have the spirits of evil, which can be kept corralled in certain places. And so this is not a Satan mirror
metaphor,
because it's not, because that is more the only real analog we find is closer to Mithril when you have Mithras and that dang it, it's out of where you have that evil versus good, and that is a very from the Levant, that idea that there is a pure goodness that is love, and then you have evil that hates life. Evil basically is anything that hates life, and then there's love that is good. And this Levantine idea.
You don't need to call me out like that. Damn.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like one of the main struggles of Norse mythology. I think this is something that the Dark Souls series captures really well. I think it's very Norse. It's not so much good versus evil. It's more life versus the inevitable end and what you do with it during that time.
Well, I mean, they literally fucking wrote down Ragnarok and then aftermath.
Yes, it's the idea that, but well, once again, but in this
they
case,
say the aftermath to Ragnarok is Genesis. Some people like to say.
So you have the ideology.
Well, they had some of the gods the ones that end up living after Ragnarok is supposed to take place or did take place. May have.
And well, there is no record because that's the end of the age. And with Ysigdral and the tree of life growing. Yes, you're right. It becomes life of any kind. The life of any kind versus the inevitable death, with death being evil itself. And in the Levantine ideology, it's not that death necessarily is evil, but that the antithesis of life, because life is considered to be eternal. So therefore, it's not death being the ultimate villain. It is anti-life that is the ultimate villain. Anything that chooses to destroy what is on the earth. And then you have life or goodness and love being transcendent of even life. So when we look at the Norse mythos of life, this thing that is just right in front of us, this world here and now, there is a knowledge that there's something out there, but it's beyond. We don't see a lot of the spirits. You do see the spirits of the dead. You do see that, and that's the reason why hell is so important. But we don't see the spirit splitting from place to place. You see the gods, and you see the elements of earth. You see a lot of the elementals, fire, water, things like that. But we see it as still in this plane. It's still here in front of us. And in the Levantine ideology, it's spirits that are beyond our sight, things that are beyond what even any man could see. And then you have that in the Greek mythos where it all takes place. There's this spirits and lamias and evil versus good, but it's about that world being kept separate. It's a lot like Japanese mythology in that way, or Eastern mythologies that they are, and religions that they keep what is on this side of life away from on that side of the spirit world. And that is the great struggle, is keeping life here away from that spirit world. And so there's
all the stories are when the spiritual world and the physical come together and meet.
Yes,
almost always.
Yes, in fact, that's a huge part of anime, is when the spirit crosses over into the physical. In fact, 90% of it is about spirit meeting physical and what happens when that takes place.
And cat
not
girls.
good things.
Please no cat
Not
girls.
a lot of good things. But I keep going back to this idea that you guys are saying that Prometheus is a hero because he gave us knowledge and all that, and I just had to give like a massive carved in smirk of that and say, oh, I don't know, really, is that such a good thing, considering what we became, especially these days?
In the Greek mythos,
nukes,
what he gave us was
stuff.
the ability to get out of get out from under the thumb of oppressors, which were the gods.
That's
in
right.
the case of Greek mythology.
Right. It's the
Which
right
we
to
turned
decide your
ourselves
own
into
fate.
oppressors. So
That's one of the prevailing themes of Greek myth, is kind of forging your own path. And a lot of heroes, and I mean, usually they would end up having guidance through the gods, but they would also forge their own path.
Yes,
Yeah,
in fact,
we're kind of coming up to hard stop on the clock shortly.
let Rose speak. Let her speak. Please
Oh,
don't be mute.
absolutely. But I just wanted to give the heads up.
That's fine. Sorry. No, the pathway. That part is actually one of the most pervasive images. And we all say, how do they handle the path? In mythologies, every mythology has a pathway that the hero must take. There is a road, and it is bounded in by monsters and creatures, and it leads towards an unknown destination. This is your ability to see between what is simply evil versus just breaking out on your own. Read the mythos, see for yourself what they considered for the most part to be good and evil. You will find a common theme that overtakes all of the things that we have been taught, that overtakes everything that you have learned in this age. And simply because at one point in time we have become corrupt does not mean that it was not a beautiful gift and gave life to millions, billions before us. And we have to learn how to look beyond what is this tiny plane that we're in right now to see
we go in cycles.
Yes. And we're going to see that this is all part of a pattern, and we are part of that story.
I think that's something I like about more Polynesian and Hawaiian mythology, because people always think about like the Tahitian monsters that they've seen carved on like wooden statues and stuff, but that's not what Polynesian culture and Hawaiian culture is, mythologically speaking. Like Hawaiian mythology, they have a lot of the same stories as like other mythologies. It's like there's the demigods or the heroes or the man who rises up and slays the Akuna or the monsters, demons and spirits and such. But all of the biggest Hawaiian and Polynesian mythos stories are about cultivation and or preservation instead of the destruction of something else. I need to look more into that.
I know you really should, because one of the things I love about Polynesian mythology, and we hadn't really talked about it that much because a lot of people don't know that much about it. So congratulations on knowing something about it. You're all right. The cultivation of humans, or the cultivation of plants, the sacred and everything that is in front of us. And that is where that Polynesian, whether we call it Polynesian religion, touches, the divine touches humanity through cultivation and through interaction with earth. And the spirits still live there. The ancestors, you find your ancestors in the soil on which they touch. There is that connection with the divine there that a lot of people don't realize, that cultivation is of a human. It's like growing a flower. And that is celebrated in that. And the need to protect it. Also, that intention to destroy what might destroy what is most important, which is the cultivation of life, whether it's a plant, a human, an animal, is sacrosanct in the Polynesian religion.
Yeah, and like even like in the case of the island of Maui, there's Haleakala, which when you translate it means house of the sun. It was named after that because of the Hawaiian myth of Maui, and this is his most famous legend. He goes atop the mountain when the volcano was no longer active.
Yeah.
And because the people of the islands were telling him that they needed more, they weren't able to grow enough crops to feed everybody. And so what he does is he goes atop the mountain, he looks up at the sun and it pleads it to slow down and give more energy to the people. It refuses, so he lassos the thing, ties a hook and a rope around it, and then he tethers it down to a stake he puts in the ground in his grandmother's farm, or his grandmother's farm, and it's just basically and that's why the sun is up so often in Hawaii. That's the legend anyway.
There's a similar story told by, I think it's by the Pequots around here, where they just took the sun for granted, and then they noticed the days were getting shorter and shorter, and it was cold all the time. And so one of them fashioned a fish net. And when the sun, he first went out and tried to stop the sun to say, "Mr. Sun, can I talk to you for just a minute?" And he was gone. So he tries again, "Mr. Sun, can I?" Gone. So he fashioned a fish net, caught the sun, stopped him for a minute. It's like, "Hey, I need to talk to you." You're never here anymore. We miss you. Could you please come back?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, you guys never acknowledged me, so I thought you didn't want me around. Yeah, I could come back, but I also have friends on the other side of the world, so I'll spend more time over there, and then I'll start spending more time over here, and then I'll go back and forth. And that's their story of how they got the seasons.
Well,
yeah,
this is
no,
also
I've heard that before. That's cool.
Reflected in the Japanese mythology also of Amaterasu, who hides away. She is the sun, and she hides away in a cave, and she has to be lured back out. There are so many stories about these. They almost transcend myth. What happened to the sun? And in fact, this is talked about when we look at these general cycles of space weather. I love space weather. It's a real thing. It's not astrology, it's astronomy. And as we look at those cycles of space weather and the potential for the sun, if the Earth is knocked off its axis by a passing asteroid or something else, for us to literally lose time or days or any other number of things, and that has perhaps happened in the past, and we see this so often.
Pole shifts, you mean?
Yeah, you actually have, yes, for the ability for the sun to be there's waning of the sun's power just through cycles, solar cycles. And so these, as we call them, myths, and it's okay to call them that, and religions, but they are the stories of people, of the way that they interacted with the world from time immemorial. We can learn so much from this and seeing what we have in common. Yes, there are some cultures that are very brutal, that frankly don't value life at all. That can be very tough on things. But as we go ahead and look at that broader picture of the world and all of the stories, we would do well, instead of to discount them, to learn them, so that we ourselves can create our own secular mythos through our writing. Because this is how we return that gift back to the world, translating it again, putting it in another form, bringing the hero and the villain to life, and letting them live again in our works.
We need another Maui. We need another Heracles and Perseus, and all of that stuff as well. And that's why all of you guys who have actually published stuff or are about to publish, in the case of Lord Otter, that it's so cool. I'm so glad that I know you guys and that people are trying to bring the myth forward. Because like what I had when I was growing up, Star Wars and all the things that I love, some of those things still exist and are still worth it, but most of them have been disturbed or distraught or altered so much so that they don't even look like the same thing
Disney
anymore.
doesn't understand Star Wars at all, and
it really doesn't.
Being a very classic tale of good versus evil, a Greek fucking hero.
Well, this is going to sound very pretentious of me to say, but I'm actually, where we are talking about different myths and the overall path that's kind of common to each of them individually. I'm surprised to see one actually appearing in my story even.
Yes.
It's part of course, it's part of the themes, but I also think it's part of the setting. And what's interesting is that heroes versus villains, there's two different ways that path is taken. One that's a bit more honest, one that's a lot more devious, which is very interesting to me.
I'm excited to see what you have.
I'm interested too, man. I'm excited to read your book. Between the art, you be an otter writing a book in the first place. Who would have thought?
Athletic tits.
Billy Bob Sack is warning you.
It's like you do one of those like one of those searches like with a Word document. It says shows you which words are used the most. It's like the, of, him, her, and then athletic tits.
Oh my goodness!
Listen, Christian, you're gonna have to look out for it because I'm gonna make fun of him in my short story.
You'll likely be able to point to where that was originally at.
Otter, you got to get one of these shirts.
Oh my goodness!
There you go.
I really need to get that. That really does suit me.
Oh, that's so cool.
What if you like people though, and you're also a writer?
You can still have a good laugh.
I like and hate people. It's the duality of life.
I love some people, and I really can't stand others.
Well, otters are superior, so I don't know what you people are talking about.
Mirror Sphere Origins says
back in the fucking cage.
In book 2 he gets a lot. Mirror Sphere Origins says in books 2 he gets a lot of inspiration from the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, he and I talked about that. It sounded super cool.
Okay, so the Book of Enoch actually is pivotal to the creation of Watcher of the Damned, as you might have guessed, Watchers of the world. and it's actually there's a lot of hidden. So if you like to not read, watch it down because it's all the way through the series, and it's very allegorical in that respect to the Book of Enoch. And actually, Christ quotes the Book of Enoch in Scripture. One of the only ones that isn't included in the Protestant version of the Bible that he actually quotes it or attributes directly to it.